We're going to start with worsted weight yarn. I would consider this to be a medium shade. If you're a beginner crocheter, I think it's always a good idea to use a yarn that is on the lighter side because it's going to be easier to see your stitches. The next thing I hope you were able to find was a 6.5 millimeter hook. This is a little bit larger than is usually called for when using a worsted weight yarn, but again, I'm trying to make the stitches easy for you to see. That way they'll be easier to work with and easier to count. Just need a basic pair of scissors, a tapestry needle, that's going to be to weave in your ends, a stitch marker, and a ruler or a little tape measure to measure your final piece. So once you've had a chance to gather all your supplies, let's pull out your yarn and your hook and get started on the Slipknot. The very first thing you're going to need to do when working on any crochet project is to create a Slipknot. I'm going to teach you the easiest way I know how, because when I was learning to crochet, the Slipknot was one of the most difficult things I had to do. So what I want you to do is just unwind some of your yarn to make it easier to work with so that it's not pulling on the ball. And then I want you to get a tail that's about 10 to 12 inches long. What you're going to do is create a circle with the yarn and just pinch where that yarn crosses over and creates an X. Hold that with your fingers. Then with your other hand, you're going to just reach through and pull the tail, the loose tail of the yarn. Now what I'm doing here is I'm grabbing both ends, the one that's loose and the one attached to the ball, and keeping my finger hooked in the initial loop. Pulling it up, and there is your Slipknot. You're just going to slide your crochet hook from back to front and continue pulling on the loose end, and that, is your Slipknot created. Now that you have completed the Slipknot, the next step in the project is going to be to complete the chain. In this project, we're going to be chaining 25 stitches. With your Slipknot on the hook, you're going to put your yarn over your hook and pull it through the loop. As a first-time crocheter, you're going to be wanting to pull your stitches tight. Try and keep your hands relaxed so that everything glides up and down easily on the hook. This is going to make the whole project much easier for you. Also, if you chain your initial chain too tight, you might find that your work curves, but we'll worry about that later. Okay, so you're going to go yarn over hook and through the loop. And you can see as I'm working my chains, I'm grabbing my work here. What I'm doing is I'm just pulling it down slightly so that loop is a little bit bigger and it makes it a little bit easier to glide the hook through. So we're going to go yarn over and through the loop. Yarn over and through the loop. Yarn over and through the loop. And I'll slow this video down so that you can follow me a little bit easier. But for now, we're going to keep going until we have chained 25. Also, just a little tip, keep unwinding the yarn from the ball. It'll just make it easier if you're not fighting with the ball and that your yarn is easier to move around. Okay, so what are we at here? Let's just check our... So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we have 10. So we have 15 more to go. So that is your initial chain done. And we'll just double check that we have 25 stitches. Now when you're counting your stitches, each V is a chain. So you can see them here. It's like a little V. So we're going to count. The one on the hook doesn't count. We're going to start counting here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. And you can also see that my chains are quite loose. And that's going to make them really easy to work into. Now that we've finished our initial chain, we're going to move on to row 1 of the pattern. As you can see, it says single crochet in second chain from hook. So I'm going to show you where that is. This is going to be your first chain and this is your second. To single crochet, you're going to insert your hook through the middle of that chain so that you've got 2 loops on your hook. You're then going to wind your yarn around your hook and pull it through both loops. So again, there's your chain. I'm going to insert the hook, wind it around, yarn over hook, and through both loops on your hook. Again, remember, try to keep your hands relaxed and your tension on the slightly loose side so that your stitches are easy to work. If you're pulling too tight, it's going to be really difficult to slide that hook through. Also, if you're having a hard time pulling it through both loops on the hook, you can insert your hook, yarn over, pull it through, and when you've got the 2 loops here, you can yarn over, pull it through 1, pull it through 2. And again, you can see that I'm just sort of gently pinching my work and pulling it down to make those loops a little bit easier to work with. So you can go yarn over, through, yarn over, through 1 loop, and through 2 loops. That's just if you're having a little bit of a hard time pulling it through 2. The easiest way, the quickest way is to do yarn over and through both. So I'm going to continue right to the end of the row, and we're going to be counting our stitches at the end of each row to make sure that we're not picking up or dropping any stitches. If you find that your dropping stitches are picking up, what's going to happen is your finished project is going to have uneven edges. It's not going to end up being a nice square. So I will also do a video on how to correct your work if you have picked up or dropped stitches. But for now, we're just going to go along and finish working the single crochet into the foundation chain. You can pause the video at this time if you want to meet me at the end too, but I'll keep going if anyone wants to follow along. I like to lay my work flat. I find it easier to count the stitches, and also I find it easier if I can see the V, so flipping it upside down sometimes helps. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So that's perfect. You don't have 25 stitches anymore because we worked into the second stitch or second chain from the hook. So that means that we're minus 1 stitch. So if you have 24 stitches, that's perfect. So for the next video, we are going to start working into the back side of your single crochet. Okay, so now that we've finished our first row, at the end of that row, we are going to do 1 chain stitch and we're going to turn our work. We're going to be working single crochet again. The only difference being is that in row 2, we're going to be working into the back side of your single crochet of row 1 instead of working into the chain stitch. So I'm going to make sure you do that properly. So do your chain 1 and turn your work so that the back of row 1 is facing you. What you're going to be doing this time, instead of working between the 2, you're going to be working under both loops. So you're going to insert your hook between this post and this post and under the 2 loops. So you can see you've got 3 on your hook. You're going to do a yarn over, pull it through, yarn over again, and just as in row 1, you're going to pull it through both the loops. So insert your hook so that you've got both loops from the single crochet of the previous row on your hook, yarn over again, and pull it through. So insert your hook, yarn over, pull it through, yarn over your hook again, and through both loops. And you're going to work that all the way along the back side of row 1. Be careful that you're managing to get into every stitch so that your count stays the same, and remember at the end of row 2 your count should be 24. I'm just going to speed up this video so we can get to the end of row 2. And you're on your way to finishing the washcloth. There's nothing else to it besides this. You're going to continue to work these rows now until your piece measures 8 inches, or if you prefer to count rows, it's going to be 33 rows, and I'll teach you a quick counting tip as well when this is done. So just let's work all the way to the end. Now the reason I have the stitch marker is that sometimes in a project like this, when you get to the end, it's hard to determine where your last stitch actually is, and this is when most people are likely to either gain or lose a stitch. So once I get to the end of this row, I'm going to count, make sure I have 24. See, right now I'm not sure if that's a stitch or not, and the only way I'll be able to tell is by counting. So I'm going to count this row and see what I'm at. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. Okay, perfect example of why we need a stitch marker. So I was at 23 and I wasn't sure if this last one was actually a stitch. So it is, so I'm going to make sure I get into both those loops and do my single crochet, and then I'm going to chain 1 and turn. So this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark this stitch so that when I come back I'm going to know that that's a stitch, and you can do the same thing on the other end as well. Okay, so that's row 2 done. So I will meet up with you for row 3, and then I will leave you to work the rest of the rows until the piece measures 8 inches. Okay, so here we are again meeting up for row 3, and row 3 is going to be worked exactly the same as row 2. We're going to be working into the back side of row 2, making sure that we pick up both loops on the hook for our single crochets. So I have done my chain 1 and turned it as directed at the end of row 2. So we're going to insert the hook, yarn over, and through 2 loops. Insert, yarn over, through, and insert the hook, yarn over, pull it through, yarn over, and through both loops. And I'm just going to continue on now until the end of the row. And remember, count your stitches at the end of every single row. This is going to be the last row I do with you, because now we're just repeating row 2 right up until the piece measures 8 inches, or you have done 33 rows. I'm actually going to take off the stitch marker because it's weighing my project down. Okay, now that you've continued to work all your rows and you're at the end of the piece, we're going to measure. Now, the measurements between my piece and your piece may be a bit different, and that's because of the gauge, how tightly you work your stitches. So I have measured mine to be 8 inches across by 8 inches in length. My 8 inches in length equals 33 rows. I mentioned earlier I'm going to teach you an easy way to count your rows. When you're working in back and forth, each rib is actually 2 rows of crochet. So you're going to just count them like this: 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32, 33. So I guess your next question is, if your piece does not measure 8 inches across, and I'm guessing it probably measures closer to about 7.5 inches. As a first-time crocheter, you probably work a little bit tight. All you're going to do is just measure your length to equal your width, and then you're going to end up with a perfect square. So the last thing we have to do is finish off our piece. So we've got our hook in here, and all we're going to do at the very end is do a yarn over the hook, pull it through, and pull this tight, and then pull on your piece to make this knot tighter. Then from there, we're gonna clip the yarn. Now make sure when you're clipping it that you leave a tail long enough to weave in, and also make sure that you're clipping the end of the yarn that moves. So we'll just snip this off there. That'll give us lots of length. If you snip the other end of the yarn, you're not going to have any room to weave it in. Okay, now that you've had a chance to thread your darning needle, I'm going to teach you the best way to finish off your project. When I first started to crochet, I thought it would be great to weave my needle in and out of the open spaces. Not a good idea. What you want to do is actually work through the stitches where you find it a little bit of resistance when putting that needle through. That means it's a great spot to put your needle through because it's gripping the yarn and it's not going to come out or unravel on you. So you can see I've just gone diagonal there. If you have a hard time pulling it through, just pull that first loop through and then pull it. Don't pull too hard because then that's gonna happen to your project and that looks a bit messy. So just, again, keep your hands comfortable, and then I'm just working it back up again. And I'm not going through on this side. On a washcloth, it's not so important, but when you start making hats and whatnot, you're going to want your finishings to be very clean. And through. So again, you're going to be working through stitches, not open spaces. And then I'm just going to take my scissors, cut that off very close to the cloth, and you're done. And then you're just going to want to weave in the other end. So you have made your very first washcloth. Now you can make a few more. Just wrap a little ribbon around them and they make a really cute gift along with some soaps.